with the reflecting pool, and he's turned it into a total disaster. Whether it's a reflecting pool, the ballroom, the Kennedy Center, the arch he's building to himself, Donald Trump is all about projects that will essentially for himself be about him, about his administration, and he's ruining national monuments. It is outrageous that Donald Trump right now is lying. I mean, look, we've known that he has a problem with the truth, but this is now the single largest liar in the history of American politics, looking straight into the camera and telling people that it was vandalized by someone using a box cutter. I mean, give me a break. Everyone has eyes. We can see what is happening. This was a shoddy, horrific job done by a Trump donor in a process that, quite frankly, was not legal. And now Donald Trump is trying to fix it. Well, we're going to investigate this. We're investigating this, the ballroom, the arch, all of these projects. And in this one in particular, those two businesses have a lot of questions that they need to answer, and we're demanding those answers immediately.
In fairness, it's not clear that this was ever going to be an easy job. In fact, earlier today, CNN reports that 2 employees from a company that did earlier work on the reflecting pool 15 years ago say that the company passed on Trump's renovation because they found it unfeasible. What's your reaction to that?
And that's exactly why you go through a bidding process, is to bring in a variety of companies, businesses. You can compare them. That's the whole part of the bidding process. But to just go ahead and pick your friend and your neighbor or your donor, that's not the way to actually do business from apparently America's greatest businessman who wrote books about his business acumen. I mean, give me a break. Donald Trump is destroying these monuments. And I think what's really outrageous is one of these companies had only worked on one other federal project in their entire business career.
So there you go. I don't know what to say about this reflecting pool other than what a debacle. And the reason you go out to bid, and this is in local governments as well, cities, counties, states, there are laws where you have to put a bid out to an open bid process, and you can't use a sole source contractor unless they're the only person that can do the work. In this case, Donald Trump kind of claimed there was an emergency, that he needed the reflecting pool done right away, which he claims everything's an emergency, so he doesn't have to ask permission, and just went ahead with this. But clearly there's algae in the reflecting pool. Clearly, the paint is coming up. It was a shoddy job. It was done cheaply, and I don't know why. I guess I know why, but Donald Trump's trying to say that it was vandalized, which there's no proof of that. There's no evidence of that. Now they put a fencing up around the pool so no one can go near it. And if you're seen touching the water, apparently, according to Gene Pirro, that's going to be a federal crime and it's prosecutable. And they actually wrote citations to 2 people over the last few days for touching the water or doing something with the water. And now she's obviously thinking about making those federal felonies, which is, borderline about as ridiculous as it gets. So in the next clip, another one of my favorites, Joaquin Castro, a representative on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. On Foreign Affairs, he's a ranking member of the subcommittee on the Western Hemisphere and also serves on the subcommittee on the Indo-Pacific. And he's talking about the Supreme Court and how they decided to become Trump's partner in a mass deportation campaign. Let's play the clip.
But today's decision by the Supreme Court is shameful. It's cruel. Shame. And today, the Supreme Court decided to become a partner in Donald Trump's mass deportation campaign, rather than a branch of government that carries out legitimate judicial review. Now, let's keep in mind who these folks are. Hundreds of thousands of people and potentially millions of others will be subject now to deportation. There are folks who are raising families, people who are building businesses, they're healthcare workers, they're teachers, they're folks who are building the economy of this country. And Donald Trump and the Supreme Court now are showing them the exit to our country. Now, bear in mind that the places that these folks come from are places that our own State Department tells Americans that they should not travel to. You're talking about places where there is real violence and gangs and danger. And yet, that's exactly where our government is now sending folks. It's absolutely wrong, and I stand with Yvette and others who are committed to make sure that Congress does something about this and acts swiftly to change it. Thank y'all so much. Let's keep up the fight.
So this Supreme Court decision is it's not completely unprecedented, but it's very uncommon, because what it says is that when people come to the border in Mexico, that the border patrol agents and the Customs and Border Patrol agents can actually physically turn them away. The asylum seekers can be turned away before they even get onto U.S. Ground and left in Mexico. So that's kind of a part of what they did. And they also agreed that when they're deporting Syrians and Haitians, that they don't have any deportation rights. So that means no due process, no rights. And part of what they're doing is they're saying is, since they're still on Mexican land and they don't make it to America, they technically can't apply for asylum. And some of you may know the history, or they may call in later and say something about Obama, because back when Obama was president, he did shut down San Diego, not in quite the same manner, because the asylum seekers were actually on American soil for the most part when they arrived, but Obama had to stop. There was an influx of Haitians coming in through San Diego, and that had to be curtailed. So it's not unprecedented, but in the way that they're doing, the manner they're shutting it down. And when you have no deportation rights, does that mean that you can be Syrians that have been living in America for decades? You're living here for decades, like the representative said. You have houses and jobs and grandchildren and children, and you have neighbors, and then you can be deported. And I think that since you don't have any rights, they can deport you to the country of their choice. They can deport you to countries in Africa or any other place that's willing to accept those refugees, asylum seekers, and people who have been taken into custody for being illegal aliens. This next clip is kind of interesting. J.D. Vance, who I think just completely sold out. I don't recognize the guy anymore. It seems like he doesn't stand for anything other than what he's told to stand for. And he's comparing the Nixon legacy, saying that, can you imagine if the Nixon Watergate legacy, if the issue happened today, that would mean nothing, and kind of doing a comparison. But to me, that's more about the Republicans, right? That's more about the Congress and the Supreme Court, because back when Nixon was impeached, he resigned before it went to the Senate for confirmation, and held basically a criminal court, because he knew he was going to lose in the Senate. But that's because at the time, the people in the Congress and the Americans believed in truth and justice and the American way. They did not like liars. They did not like cons. They did not like cheats. They did not like people who were possibly believed to be pedophiles or abusive toward women. And so when J.D. Vance makes this comparison, he's trying to say that would be nothing today, a nothing burger today. But that's the point. The point is, it was something back then. It meant something to Americans, and the Republicans weren't just walking around going, "Oh well, I guess that's what the president wants, so I'll vote for it." They actually stood for something. So let's take a look at the clip.
So we were talking about this a little bit backstage, but I'm actually fascinated by Nixon as a character in history. I think that his historical legacy is enjoying a bit of a renaissance, but I think deservedly so. As I joked with Robert backstage, if Watergate happened tomorrow, it would be like a 12-hour news story. Like, the idea that it would have taken down a presidency is crazy. And by the way, if you look at the story of how the deep state took down Richard Nixon, it's not all that different from what the same groups of people, the same institutions tried to do to Donald Trump in the first Trump administration. There is a parallel. I also just, at a personal level, young senator, vice president, writes some best-selling books. is hated by the media, it kind of sounds like JD Vance. So I'm a little, I've always liked Richard Nixon. But okay, one other thing about Richard.
So there you go. And like I said on the front side of the clip, what you have to look at is he's almost making our point for us. He's making the point that in today's world, with the conservative Republicans and the centrist Republicans and the people in Congress, they're almost willing to look the other way on something that was a huge crime and a huge deal back when Nixon and Watergate and the burglary and breaking in and taking information, which doesn't amount to the corruption of today. But that's just saying that Congress is not doing their job, that no one is standing up for what's right. And I think JD Vance kind of, I don't know, that's a misstep for me, making that comparison, because he's basically saying we're so corrupt today that the presidential administration is so corrupt that something like Watergate wouldn't even last for more than a 12-hour news cycle. So I kind of hope JD Vance runs for president. I don't think he will. I think Marco Rubio will probably take the front spot once the Republican primaries are over. I kind of hope he does run, because if he runs, I think he's going to absolutely get slaughtered. Okay, moving on. Next clip. So another one of my favorites, Congressman Yasmin Ansari from Arizona. She's talking about Leon Black. So if you followed the news this morning, you know that Leon Black was interviewed by the Congress, and he is I think he was a real estate guy, but he's known to have given something like $1.5 million to Jeffrey Epstein over a period of time. And there's a lot of implications about child trafficking and some things he did that were illegal. So he agrees to come in. Well, when he comes in for his interview this morning, he doesn't really say anything. He kind of says, well, I'm not answering your questions. So in return, James Comer, the chair of the committee, who's a Republican, decides to tell everyone that he's going to subpoena Leon Black, and that the subpoena is going to be for July 16th. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to bring Leon Black back in under oath, so they can try to get him to answer some questions. And they say, they kind of say, well, he'll have to answer them. But, I don't agree. If he can come in and he can lie or plead the fifth or whatever. But let's look at the clip.
Incredible, who have lied to the committee over and over again. But today was even different than that. Leon Black was arrogant. He was smug. He refused to answer the questions, but at the same time was emphasizing how he was being transparent because this was voluntary. But when pressed on critical questions about his own sexual abuse and the allegations against him and non-disclosure agreements, he absolutely refused to answer these questions. I'm so grateful that he will be returning under oath. That's how every single one of these should be, under oath in a public hearing in front of the American people, videotaped. We need full transparency for the survivors as well as for the American public. And finally, I want to bring it back to Todd Blanche and the fact that Todd Blanche is currently going through the process that Donald Trump has nominated him to be the Attorney General. Leon Black should have been investigated by Donald Trump's Department of Justice. We have enough evidence mentioned over 8,000 times in the Epstein files. So it is absolutely critical that the Senate do not confirm Donald Trump's former personal attorney, Todd Blanche, to be the next Attorney General of the United States. This cover-up has to end immediately.
So, I know everyone's hopeful, and, calling Leon Black, in to testify under subpoena, I don't know. He still has rights. He can plead the fifth. He cannot answer. He's probably not going to lie, because lying to Congress can get you put in jail. And we all know that. In addition, a federal judge has ordered the Department of Justice to release the rest of the files and to unredact the files in the manner that they redacted them in the first place. Because what they did was they kept all the, nefarious characters' names were redacted, and they exposed all the victims, even though the victims told them ahead of time, I don't want my name exposed, and some of them didn't care. Some of them want to fight, but a lot of them did not. And they did not want their names exposed. So now they're going to have to comply with a federal judge's order. And we all think the same thing. We know why they're covering up the files. We know why so many people are involved in covering up the files. We know why these powerful men and these billionaires do not want this information out. And from what they've speculated, or some of the Congress people have been able to hear or read some of the files that haven't been released yet. And if you listen to some of the stuff they say, it's pretty bad. It's supposedly, when it comes out, it's very raw, and it's going to be very bad for the people that are involved. Like I said, in just a few minutes, we're going to have our good friend Joe Walsh, former congressman, former presidential candidate who changed from Republican to Democrat, and I don't think we clearly know whether or not he's going to run again. And sometimes people, they don't want to put that out too early. They want to wait till the right time and the right place. And we have 2+ years before that comes around. And later on, we'll have a bit of a discussion on socialism, democratic socialist. When I was here Wednesday with Brian, we took phone calls, and they brought up Marxism, and they brought up capitalism, and they brought up communism. And I think a lot of people are just throwing the word around, because Brian and I asked one of the callers, okay, well, if you're accusing them of being communists, what's the definition of communism? And obviously the caller didn't know. And then he gave us a definition, but the definition he gave us was actually the definition of fascism. So I think we should clarify that a little, mostly because the Republicans are now using this socialist word to try to turn voters and beat them down. So we'll take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we'll be talking with former Congressman Joe Walsh.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, everyone. We're back on the Pushing the Limits radio talk show with your host, Leonard Cardinelli. As I promised, at the bottom of the hour, we will have former Congressman Joe Walsh calling in, former presidential candidate and Republican turned Democrat. Hey, Congressman, are you there?
Good to be with you, my friend.
Hey, good. You know, I want to tell you real quick. I saw you on MS Now last night on Ali Velshi.
Oh,
show.
yeah. Great.
Yeah, you were on there with a panel, and I was
Yeah.
catching up on some news, and hey, there's Joe Walsh right there on MSNBC. You did a good job. It was, you know, they didn't allow you guys to talk that much, but did you enjoy the visit?
I did. Ali Velshi has that new show now, weeknight show on MS. He's great.
Yeah, he took
So it's
Stephanie
always
Rule's
good to
show.
go
Yeah.
out with him. Yep.
And she went to the mornings. But you know what? During your, I hope you don't mind me asking a couple things.
Yeah.
You did mention Democratic Socialists during the interview, and that seems to be a real issue because you know, the three Democratic Socialists won in New York, and I think you guys talked about that last night. And now the Republicans are trying to use that as a negative expression. The socialism is negative, and I was wondering if you would indulge me for 1 second, if I can just read a list of social programs, and then on the other side, maybe we can figure out if more Republicans are socialists or more Democrats. So if you ever driven on a public road or highway funded by maintained taxes, you know, you're a socialist. Streetlights, public lighting systems, sewer systems, water treatment, sanitation services, public parks, playgrounds, police departments, fire departments, public schools, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, public hospitals, clinics, and health departments, public transportation, buses, subways, rail systems, garbage collection, recycling, public waste management, disaster relief, emergency shelters, corporate tax abatements, corporate subsidies, and corporate tax relief and tax cuts. So if you've ever benefited from any of those, are you a socialist?
Well, I'd say this, my friend. Most Americans have no freaking clue what socialism means. And I think you'd agree with that. The average American has no clue what communism is. The average American has no clue what fascism is. We live in a mixed economy. We've got government and we've got the private sector, the public sector and the private sector. And we've done our best historically over the years to have a balance. We want a vibrant private sector. We believe in free markets, but you need government regulation. I know there are some wackos on the far right, you know, who would say no government. And then you've got some crazies on the far left who would want government to do everything.
Right.
We fight about, that's what we fight about. And generally, we've been able to keep it fairly balanced.
Well, as you know, I come on the show once in a while and I talk to a lot of people. And I think that what the Republicans are afraid of is that, judging by, you know, Mayor Mamdani's wins and his political pull, I think what they're afraid of is that if we, or I'll speak about me, if we continue to define socialism, if we continue to tell people, hey, if you ever drove on a road, you know, if you ever ran a corporation and they got tax abatements because they wanted to bring them to Nevada or California, let's say, for example, then that's socialism. But you're saying you hate it. And I think that's kind of what they're afraid of, because Mamdani started to kind of turn the tide on that expression, or am I wrong?
Yeah, no, partly. I mean, Mamdani would go well beyond what we have now as far as the mix of public and private. And then some of these Democratic socialists in the party who are winning would advocate even more. One of the women who won on Tuesday night, she advocates the government take control of all private property from landowners. I mean, that's way out there. Another one advocates we abolish all prisons. We abolish our borders. So I think the point is most Americans get that government plays a role in a lot of this stuff. Most Americans love capitalism, you know, the ability of all of us to do our thing and make money and all the rest. And we fight about how to balance those two. But most of the country is not MAGA or is not libertarian. And most of the country would not want to turn over the private sector to government, if that makes sense.
And I would say that, you know, open borders, and I would say complete control over all private land I would not describe that as socialism at all. That's more of that's almost like a Marxist theory. And what was interesting is I mentioned earlier in the show, I'm trying to maybe help some of the audience, not the ones that are, regulars, but people who come in and they want to disrupt, and they start throwing these expressions out and, saying that we need nothing but capitalism. But the problem is, even with capitalism, if you have only capitalism, then you have fascism, right? And you have oligarchs, right? So so anything at the extreme is not going to work for this country.
That's a great
Also,
point.
last
and
night,
that's a great point, Leonard.
Oh, go ahead,
and
go
that's
ahead.
really important to say. And again, I believe in capitalism, and I believe capitalism is the best and most free-ism out there. Capitalism has created more wealth and more opportunity for people around the world than any other ism. Capitalism has delivered more people from poverty around the world than every other ism. But you make a good point. Capitalism cannot be utterly unregulated. And
Right.
if it is unregulated, then it becomes oligarchy and crony capitalism and all the rest. It doesn't become a free market.
So it sounds like we kind of agree that some balance, whether it's more to the center or more towards the thing that surprises me, Congressman, is that in the middle of the country, there's tens of millions of people. About 75% of white people in the middle of the country that voted for Trump are on social programs, right? And so when they say they hate socialism and they want it reined in and they don't want to pay for this and they don't want to pay for that, and it's like, okay, but if you allow Trump to take that money from these social programs, he's going to give it to the billionaires and the rich people. And so I struggle to understand how people who are on these programs hate certain other people so much that they would rather give up their own rights and their own social programs. And by the way, I don't know every Republican, but I would bet you most Republicans, when they pay into Social Security for 30 years and they're finally time to get a check, even though they're a conservative Republican, or even though they're a MAGA, when it's time to get their Social Security check, they're not going to stand there, Congressman, and go, nah, that's a social program. I don't really want my check that I just paid into for the last 30 years. You kind of see what I mean?
Agreed. And most wouldn't call that socialism, and it isn't socialism. But even just that one issue, Social Security, it's a program in desperate need of reform.
Yeah.
And there should be government reform to it, and I believe there should be private reform to it. Like, I've always favored the ability of giving younger Americans the freedom, the ability to opt out and invest on their own. I think that's something we should look at, including raising the retirement age. There are a number of things we can do, but that's a major government program that is on the road to insolvency, like Medicare, unless we try to reform it.
Yeah, and I can't remember who it is, I'm sorry, but I think a bill was introduced, and I don't think it's going to get much traction, but I think a bill was introduced to make it to stop the Congress and the government's ability to take loans on the money that's in the Social Security program. I believe.
Yeah. That train
maybe
left the station a long time ago.
I'm sorry, say it again. I spoke over.
No, yeah, that train left the station a long time ago, because most Americans don't understand, as you do and I do, there's no special pot of money over here that funds Social Security. It comes in and out from people who are working, and the numbers just are no longer working. And like the average person on Medicare, well, over the course of our work lives, we all pay into Medicare, but the average person on Medicare right now is getting 4 times back in benefits what they paid into it. These programs need reform, or they're going to be gone.
We need a president who understands these issues, and not only understands, but has a plan, because you really don't hear anybody coming up with a plan to repair these damaged programs and the economics. And something else you mentioned last night, you mentioned, I think it was toward the end, white Christian nationalists, and I thought it was important because I try to understand all the time, and we have people that call in who are Christians, or they say they believe in nationalism or tribalism, and they try to they talk badly about certain people, and they're kind of racist and prejudiced against people, and they have a lot of bias. And I always kind of ask them, I go, but you're saying you're a Christian, right? And that's what you believe in. And so when you mentioned it last night, I thought it was an interesting way to kind of lead out of your comments.
Well, again, none of this is Trump, because Trump is an idiot and he has no philosophy. But the people around Trump, the Stephen Miller and what's his name, the guy at OMB, I'm running into a brain fart. But the most powerful force in my former party right now is we want to keep brown and black people out of the country, and we want this to be a Christian nation. Both of those beliefs are anathema to what America is. But Americans need to understand there are a lot of Republicans in powerful positions who want America to be a white Christian nation. This is what drives a lot of their policy. It's certainly what's driving a lot of this immigration enforcement, where they're doing all they can to keep brown and black people out.
Some people say, and I agree, that there's only one race, and that's the human race. And to treat other people like they're less or they don't matter, which I think is the whole point of this. And that's kind of what I was talking about before with the majority of I think something like 75% of people on social programs are white. But they would rather watch those programs take a hit or go away. I mean, they just, I think it was the Office of Budget Management, I'm pretty sure, came out just a couple of days ago and said the SNAP program cut 4 million people out of their benefits. And out of those 4 million people, 700,000 were children. And these are children that their best meal of the week is when they go to school Monday through Friday. On the weekends, they live in a low-income family, so they don't get really, nutritious meals and a lot to eat. So the best food they get and the most nutritious food they get is during the week. And 700,000 were cut off by the big, beautiful bill.
Well, and look, I served in Congress. When you look at the budget, to go after a program you just mentioned, which is non-defense discretionary spending, that's like not even nickels and dimes in the federal budget. So to cut programs like that is just cruel, and it makes no difference when it comes to our debt. We have an unsustainable debt in this country, period. And Democrats have not wanted to address our debt, and now Republicans have no interest in our addressing the debt. And the debt is going to bankrupt this country. And the debt has nothing to do with programs like that. The debt has nothing to do with what we spend on defense. The biggest drivers of our debt are what we call our entitlement programs. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all the health care that we need to keep a population that keeps living longer and longer, which is a good thing. But that's the biggest single line item in our federal budget, and it's the fastest growing. And politicians are cowards. They just don't want to touch it.
Yeah, and also you did mention quickly last night that I think you mentioned you're one of the original founders of the Tea Party. And it's interesting that, the Tea Party, they had many policies, but it's interesting that they were very conservative. And how they were conservatives, they did not want to add to the national debt. They did not want government involved in all of their business, and they didn't want, taxation without representation. Now that goes back to the original Boston Tea Party, but from what I understand, that was part of your core principles, and you were upset about the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah, that's why I was Tea Party. That's why I ran for Congress, because we had a debt that is going to bankrupt future generations, and both parties created it. That That's really what drove the Tea Party. Now, there were uglier aspects of the Tea Party that came to the fore later. And unfortunately, the Tea Party morphed into MAGA. And that's when I left, because MAGA is the antithesis of the Tea Party. MAGA is all about using big government to go after your political enemies and to push white Christian nationalist stuff.
Right, and have more overreach and more government overreach. And I don't know where the Tea Party stood on increasing taxes tax breaks for corporations. They had a position.
Generally the Tea Party, it was, and generally that's still where I am. I'm always trying to keep any and all taxes low, period. That's just my philosophy. I want government doing not a million things. I want government doing 100 things and doing them really well. I don't believe in government overreach from the left or government overreach from the right. And that's kind of what we got right now.
Can I ask you? I know this is more of a rhetorical question, but
yeah,
it's on the minds of many people, in particular the Democrats right now. So we have this entrenched regime. You know, your Chuck Schumers, your Hakeem Jeffries, your people who have been in leadership way too long, and in my opinion, are not effective. They're not listening to the people. They're not up on what it's going to take to either beat the Trump administration or to deal with them. And even if you do win, I haven't heard anybody come up with a plan. And can you see any path toward trying to move these people? Because they're not going to step aside. There's no way they're going to step aside. So how do we move these people, and how do we get them to step down or step aside a little bit to allow the new kind of democratic mindset to start to move in and take the lead?
It's up to the voters. Look, the Democratic Party establishment sucks. They're old, they're weak, they're out of touch, and they're not meeting this moment right now, which is why we've got these Democratic socialists. I believe the Democrats are having their Tea Party moment. You may not agree with what my Tea Party was, but it was an anti-establishment movement. We went after a weak Republican Party establishment. That's what these new Democrats are doing now. I think that's a great thing. I disagree with them on a number of their issues, but I'm glad that they're out there fighting the establishment, because the Democratic Party establishment does need to be pushed aside.
Yeah, and you know, the Tea Party, I didn't agree with everything the Tea Party did and what they stood for, but they were true, in my opinion. The greater majority of them were true conservatives. In other words, they were conservative when it came to spending. They were conservative when it came to morals and ethics. They were conservative when it came to social programs, but they were truly conservative. You know what I'm saying? They weren't saying we're conservative and then like Trump raising the debt by $8.4 trillion. You know what I'm saying?
I completely agree with you, which is why it will always sadden me that the Tea Party morphed into MAGA, that Trump, in essence, took over the Tea Party, or that the Tea Party, all my former Republican Tea Party colleagues in Congress, they all became Trump supporters, when Trump is the very thing that the Tea Party feared. The Tea Party, more than anything, fears tyranny, government tyranny. Donald Trump is a tyrant. It will always pain me that that's what the Tea Party ultimately gave in.
They were against tyranny and oppression, and here we find ourselves today with government agents that dress any way they want with a mask on and can just throw people into a white van with no plates and take them away. Well, you know, I know you're pressed for time and you have a busy schedule, and I want to very graciously thank you for coming on the show and spending a few minutes with us. What you have to say is vitally important. Is there anything, website or anything upcoming events, anything you want to put out over the air before you leave?
No, Leonard, it's always great to be with you. I'm Walsh Freedom on social media, and my podcast and Substack is called Social Contract with Joe Walsh. Thanks, my friend.
Hey, have a good day, Congressman, and thank you for your time. All right,
We'll talk
we're
again
going to
soon.
take a quick
Thanks.
break. And then on the other side, we'll be taking your phone calls at 702-221-7283. That's 702-221-7283. You can call in and, like Brian is says all the time, we have a couple of rules. They're not really rules, they're guidelines. One rule is you cannot curse when you call in because we're on AM and FM radio and it's not allowed under FCC rules. But also, we'll talk about anything, but most of the audience, most of the viewers that are watching and listening, they want to kind of stick to the topics of the day and the topics that we were talking about earlier, about the Epstein files, the war in Iran. I guess we can go into tariffs. The economy is a big one. So once again, the number is 702-221-7283, and we'll be back in a moment. Okay, welcome back to the Pushing the Limits radio show with your host, Leonard Cardinelli, filling in for Brian Shapiro, who's in Washington, D.C., getting ready to debate with Tim Pool, which, if you watch the show a lot, you know that he's been debating Tim several times. And while Tim Pool is very professional and his staff is great to Brian, they do disagree on some things. Don't forget your super chats. You can donate for $5 or more in your super chat, we will read your comments on air. So let's start with the first super chat. It's Lori Villalobos, who's one of our regulars. We talked to Lori quite a bit. Kathy Fang won her lawsuit against Blanche to release the Epstein files. Leonard and Justin, you're doing a great job. Have a great weekend. Thank you, Lori. That is so nice. She is always so supportive, and I'm enjoying doing the show. I know it's not Brian, and I don't have that. I don't yell a lot, but it's just not my nature. A couple of callers may have got cut off when they call in. So if you got cut off, just call back, and Numchuck will take your calls. We starting with number one? Okay, we'll go to Ringo. Ringo from Las Vegas. Hi, Ringo. This is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. I just got some recent news that it's a good thing that Trump is doing. There's things I don't like that he's doing. But there's a good thing I just found out. We're not getting we really don't get the right information.
Well, what's he doing that's so great right now?
He's getting King Charles out of our Federal Reserve System because the London bankers are financing Hamas and Israel. They're funding both sides of the war. And that's what the CIA's been doing. Just like the Rothschild bankers, they've been controlling our Federal Reserve, these private bankers, since 1913.
And who were they sending the money to?
To both sides of the war, to the Muslim Hamas and also to Israel. They're funding both sides of the war.
Hamas. Well, let me ask you this.
That's what the Rothschilds did in the war in our Civil War.
I did see a little bit about that. I wouldn't characterize it exactly the way you're characterizing it, but let me ask you this.
Well, it's a good thing because we need to get foreign entities and foreign bankers out of our system since 1913.
Well, if you want to go back in time, what about 2008, 2009?
What do you mean back in time?
Who financed? Well, hold on a second, Ringo. Who financed Hamas to bring them into power back in 2008, 2009?
The bankers, the foreign bankers.
That is not accurate. You need to look at your history. You can look this up on the internet. It was Netanyahu sent case after case of cash in cars, and we have witnesses and eyewitness accounts that he was the one who funded Hamas because he wanted them to have control over the Palestinian people.
Coming from the London banks from Britain. Britain sold them Palestine. They had no business doing that.
This is something that is important.
You got to see clearly these days. Pray for clarity, sir.
Yeah. Do you have anything that's relevant that happened in the last couple of days that's on the mind of everyday Americans?
What I'm saying,
like the economy.
Recent news. Yeah, this is recent news because the media is not giving the truth.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to tell me how that was proved because I haven't seen that. Exactly the way you're explaining.
You got to do your own study and investigation. You got to do your own research.
Okay, but if you're talking about something that is, like 25th on the news cycle and only lasts for an hour on one station, not a lot of people are going to know about that. What about how he's screwing up the economy?
It's new news.
Did you vote for Trump? I mean, be honest. I'm pretty sure you voted for Trump, but admit it. Did you vote for Trump?
3 times.
Really? Even though he promised to end wars within 24 hours, even though he was a convicted felon, even though he was a liable sexual offender, even though he's in the Epstein files tens of thousands of times, this is the kind of guy you relate to. You can relate to him. You like this guy?
Well, yeah. Look, Bill Clinton is in all those photographs wearing a dress, for God's sake.
Okay, but you voted for Trump. Okay, you're the one who said
somebody. You know what? Right now, I don't want to vote anymore. I'm sick and tired of politics and religion.
If I were you, Ringo, I wouldn't get tired of it, man. I would hang in there.
No,
I would educate myself and make a decision.
You're not listening to me. Let me tell you what I don't like about Trump.
I'm waiting.
We are an oligarchy. We're an oligarchy. The billionaires run China. The billionaires run Russia. The billionaires run us.
Right. And so we need to hopefully we'll take over in the midterms. The Democrats will take over the House and the Senate, and then we'll be able to maybe have a little bit more control. But I'm gonna have to leave it there, Ringo. We've got a lot of
but
people
they're all bought
waiting.
and
Thank you for
sold,
the
sir.
call. It was a good call. Next, we have Mark on line 2. Hello, Mark. This is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Hi, Leonard. Well, I didn't expect to get in so quick. Well, you know, you don't have to worry about yelling at me either. So
I don't yell.
Good. Yeah, I know. You're very calm, and I appreciate that. Hey, that caller Ringo, there's one way you know that they're conspiracy nuts. They'll never provide a source for what they're telling you, and they always tell you, well, do your own research. And that's how you know that these people are crazy.
Well, I did my own research, and I know exactly what he's talking about. And we know where a lot of the money came from. And we know that Trump has been funded by Saudi Arabia and Qatar and other places. He goes over there and he says, hey, they want to invest in us, and makes a deal. And then, as you know, then it comes to regulations, and it comes to relationships and permissions. And all of a sudden, they're getting the best deal. The oligarchs are getting all the best deals. They're saving under taxes. I don't know about you, but I pay my taxes like everyone else. I would love for somebody to come along and say, hey, you're not going to have to pay any more taxes anymore. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, I think, we know that the system is sort of lopsided in who pays the most taxes, and it tends to be the middle class. So, there is that. I certainly agree with you.
What do you think of the Iran war, Mark? Where are you at on that? Do you think it was a good idea, a bad idea? You think we lost?
Oh, gosh, of course. We had a much better deal under Obama. That's quite clear to anybody who understood what was going on. And it's odd how much money is being handed to Iran, maybe, depending on whether this is an actual deal or not just more of Trump's rambling, day-to-day nonsense.
What do you think we accomplished? Like, if anyone had to say, because I dare the callers every day. I could call in and tell me one thing we accomplished by attacking Iran.
Well, we are spending quite a bit more money on the military replenishing their stocks, and that'll go to companies here.
That's a good point. The Department of Defense is asking for 88. So when they say they haven't spent that much money, but they're asking for 88 billion, because that's their most recent ask to Congress, is $88 billion to continue the war in Iran. Doesn't that tell you kind of about how much we spent so far, at least close to it?
Yes, and it also tells you a lot about our priorities, that we do like killing people around the world, but we can't spend as much to ensure health care and that our own population is taken care of better.
How about the strategy? How about using the defense, the Patriot missiles for defense, and shooting up $4+ million defense missiles to take out $20,000 drones that are made in Iran? What about that strategy?
Well, that's if you want to. Well, I'm not sure they could actually spell strategy at that point, Leonard.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Did you know that just about every developed country on the planet has some form of universal health care? They provide health care for the people. And people point out Russia or China, and if you look, they can look it up on the internet. This is not my opinion. Even Russia and China have a kind of a healthcare program for their people. We're the only country that has a privatized program that people cannot afford. Did you know that?
Yes, I do know that. I'm not much in favor of for-profit healthcare because they want to take the money first and deny as much healthcare as they can along the way.
Did you hear about Trump's newest plan? I think he brought it up today or yesterday. So he says he's gonna ask the medical companies to open up a loan program so that people can get even further into debt. And so when they can't pay their bills, instead of helping people who are poor or who are disabled pay their bills, they're saying let them just take a loan, let them get more in debt. What do you think of that?
Well, I claim to be sane. I think that's utterly ridiculous, and it's cruel. It
is cruel. All right, well, we're going to have to leave it there, Mark. It was a good conversation. Of course, we appreciate your call, and have a great day. Good call.
You take care of yourself.
Next we'll go to line 5. Terry calling from Maryland. Hi, Terry.
Hi,
this is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Hi, Leonard. Good afternoon. It's good to see you on. First of all, to Ringo, if you don't like an oligarchy, why'd you vote for him for 3 times? Okay, I'm just putting that out there. The second thing I want to talk about, you're talking about socialist and socialism. A small summary of that is it's really the core goal is to reduce economic inequality
Yes.
and prioritize human needs over profit. Okay. And the thing I want to address too is I have had so many conversations about Social Security with people who collect it. They absolutely will not believe that that is a social program.
Yeah, I know Joe Walsh said that,
absolutely-
and I was kind of wondering what he meant by that, because you're forced to pay it. It's held by the government and controlled by the government, and then you're paid out on it. I guess what they're saying is it's a quote unquote investment program, but not like a 401k. You know what I'm saying? Like you pay into it, and then you're allowed to take annuities, at the end of the program. I'm not sure. It's, to me, in my opinion, that is definitely a social program.
Yeah, and it's a safety net for people. And I just stopped having those arguments because apparently they don't seem to understand it. What bothers me the most is, in terms of Social Security and keeping it funded, how about that we maybe tax billionaires so they can pay their fair share of taxes, stop giving them tax breaks?
Yeah, they
stop overfunding the military. How about things like that?
Yeah, the military social program, right? Police, fire, social programs.
Exactly. Now,
and
those are things we need, especially, police and stuff like that. But, $88 billion now for the war? Really?
And that's
I mean,
not even the budget. They're asking for that just to keep the war going. So
yeah,
most people estimate in excess of $100 billion a day. And like I keep asking, and I hope maybe maybe a Trump supporter or a MAGA will call in and try to explain one good thing that they accomplished by attacking Iran. One thing that it raised prices. Inflation is through the roof. It ruined our standing in the world. It was embarrassing. It ruined our relationship with Europe, our allies, our friends. It's making Russia rich because they're selling oil through the back, around the backside of the island and making billions. And so what did it do for us? What did it do for me and you and everyday Americans?
Absolutely, Leonard. I totally agree with you. And I guess, what my biggest concern is that people just, you hear the word socialism and they totally freak out. And it's just, it's just ridiculous.
And that's why I try to bring it up, Terry,
because they don't do their research. They don't care. It's ridiculous.
Well, they've turned it into this powerful word that they're socialists. And what I'm trying to say is, what I try to tell people is that we're all social. We all benefit from social programs. If you've ever driven on a road, a public road that was built by your city or county, then you agree with socialism because you're using the road that was built with tax money. It's as simple as that. But we're gonna have to leave it there, Terry. I appreciate the call. Always a good call with you, and hopefully and have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too, Leonard.
Next, we'll go to line 6. Frank. Hi, Frank. This is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Hey, Leonard, Governor Carnelli. I saw a blog that Scott Vincent was answering questions. What is, maybe you can answer it, I'm not sure. Core inflation in Iran was a conflict. Can you make sense out of any of that?
Well, they're obviously calling Iran a conflict to stay away from their word war because, as you know, the war powers is vested with the Congress, and you have to go and get permission. And even if you don't get permission, if you say that you had no choice, you still have to go back to Congress within, I believe it's 90 days. Someone can correct me on that. You have to go back and ask permission. So they're trying to say that it was,
conflict.
Right. That it was just a conflict. But core inflation, or what did you say? It was a core inflation, you said?
Yeah, that's what it said.
So core inflation is what they're talking about is how much inflation there is related to the CPI, related to the gross national product, and saying that when you look at the increase in the PPI and the consumer price index, and when you look at those economic factors, that the core inflation is acceptable within those parameters. But That, you know what that is? That's just some con man, double talk, double
Bernie.
speak. Because if you and I go to the store and we go to the grocery store, we know that the prices are ridiculous. And let me tell you what core inflation does not address. Something as basic as this. When you have inflation and the wages of the American public do not raise as fast as inflation, when we're not making as much money as the cost of living is going up, that is a bad economy. You don't have to have gone to college and taken an economics course to know that. If your wages are not going up and the inflation's out of control, core inflation is an irrelevant concept to what we're talking about.
That's what I thought. Wasn't sure. And one more thing. Just the other day on Facebook blog, Mike Johnson said that the congressman could not live on $174,000 a year.
Why not?
Yeah, that's what I said. I want to throw it.
What's
out
that?
to people.
15,000 a month or six? I didn't. I could do math
I
in my
don't
head
know,
real quick,
but if they can't live it, I'll take it.
yeah, that's, well, you know what? Good call, Frank. I appreciate it. We're
Thank
going to have to leave it there. We have some people on hold. If you're going to call in, the number 702-221-7283, and we're taking your phone calls here live on PTL Radio Show. Next, we'll go to Dave. Line 1, Dave from California. Dave, hi, this is Leonard. What's on your mind?
What's up, Leonard? How you doing?
Good.
Thanks for taking my call. So let's go back to Social Security, because I got 5 friends that work for Social Security. All right. So you people don't understand how Social Security works. I'm going to teach you how it works, since I have people that call me that I hang out with people that work for Social Security. One thing, there's the minimum that you can get, even if you don't work. People they turn 62, which I'm going to be turning 62 in November, which I work. But those that don't work, the minimum you'll get at least about a little bit close to at least over $800. That's the minimum. But if you end up working, the more taxes you put into the Social Security, the more you make, and the more you stay working, the more you're going to get more money to retire. Like me, if I stay for another couple of years or so, instead of getting the $1,500, I'll get $1,750 for my Social Security, which is pretty damn good. And plus, you can actually work you can work up to $2,500 part-time to supplement your Social Security, up to $2,500. As long as you don't go over that, you won't get penalized on your Social Security. So people that say that, so that people are just like Democrats or socialists and all, if you're on Social Security, come on, let's just face it, people. Don't damn well lie to me that you're on Social Security and you're voting Republican and you're becoming a hypocrite on this radio or anybody that you talk to, saying that you don't like the Democrats because of that specific reason about socialism, whatever you want to call it. But you're on Social Security. You need to put up or shut up, because I'm telling you right now, that's the bottom line. Just shut up.
Yeah, and you have to pay it like taxes. Like you don't have a choice. You have to pay Social Security, and the government will hold the money.
It's on your check. It's on your check.
And the government will hold the money for usually 30 years, sometimes 35, 40 years, depending on when you start working. And at the end of that time, when you apply, if you apply at 62, you don't get as much. 67 is considered a retirement age by Social Security.
Right.
65 is a good average. Some people wait till 70. But what happens is it's almost like an annuity. You get that money. Now you get a monthly payment.
I want to interject for a moment. When you say 65, people retired to 65. Now 67 people, if you wait till 67, some people don't, and I get it. But if you wait till 67 years old, that means that you can get the whatever max or whatever 2,500 or whatever at 67. But you can also get a full-time job and make over the amount that you get for your Social Security and not be penalized. But if you're under 67, then, and if you retire, then you get your Medicare, you get your Medi-Cal, Medicare, whatever at 65, but you still have to keep the numbers of working supplement, in other words, working part-time, and keep it under the Social Security amount so you don't get penalized, because they will tax you if you're working over that amount in your Social Security. So 67 is unlimited. That means that you will not get taxed, you get penalized. You You can work full time. I don't care, 3 jobs and still get your Social Security. So you're good. You're good to go.
Yeah, I wonder how many of the MAGAs and how many of the Republicans that call themselves conservative, I wonder how many of those, because you have to imagine there's probably millions that are working people that are paying their taxes, paying their Social Security. I wonder how many of them will get into their 60s and decide to retire and say, no, I don't want that check. Don't give it to me. That's a social program. I mean, you see the hypocrisy of what they're trying to do?
Mm-hmm. They do. They want that check. Come on, Leonard. They want that check. If it's something that's coming, if it's something that they're basically putting behind their pocket when it comes to money, like a check, and they're out there saying that they don't like socialism, come on, people. You better shut up, because if you're on Social Security and you're voting Republican, you are a damn well a hypocrite. So don't you ever come on this radio, because if you don't want Social Security, then die without Social Security, and then see if you don't end up being put out in the street with the homeless. I guarantee you one thing: if Social Security is going to keep a roof over your head and it pays your rent, you will take your Social Security. Thank you, Leonard.
We appreciate the call, Dave. That was a good call. Thanks for bringing that up. A lot of people are interested in, a lot of the listeners are interested in Social Security and social programs and how they work. Okay, let's go to the next caller. We have Andy on line 3. Andy, hi, this is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Hey, Leonard, I ain't got too much to say, but first of all, they're not going to get anywhere with that Leon Black, because all he's going to do is say, well, I'm going to exercise my amendment, my 5th Amendment, and they're not going to get anywhere with him. He's just, I don't know, he's just a piece of crap. And another thing, I want to go after Whiskey Pete for firing another top official. This guy has no clue what the hell he's doing.
Yeah,
it's pathetic, Leonard.
And
you're
talking about Pete Hegseth, correct? The Department of Defense.
Yes, and he got rid of another top official the other day. I guess his name is Donahue.
Yeah, and he's made it clear that he's going to hold up promotions for females, black
people,
females,
for black people,
minorities. Yeah. What do you think? Does that sound like racism to you,
Leonard? It's beyond racist. And Warren Smith was on Brian's show one day. I called in, and this is when they fired that Air Force. There was an Air Force guy. He was top of the line of the Air Force. Guy was black, and I even told Warren Smith. I said the reason why they fired him because he was black. And Warren goes, "Oh, yeah, whatever." I go, "Yeah, it's pathetic. It's pathetic, Leonard. It's absolutely pathetic."
Yeah, the only difference between racism in the last few years and going back to the beginning of the 2000s and the 60s and 50s, the only difference that I could see is that they don't even have to hide it anymore. No one's even ashamed. Trump is not ashamed to say, "I'd rather have," back in the day in Atlantic City, he didn't want to have black dealers and the Central Park 5 and all the lawsuits for discrimination. And so
Central Park 5, he took out a full page in the Washington Post and said that they need to execute them 5 people. And then they were found guilty later on down the road from DNA. So dude, this is just pathetic. I'm tired of this, and I just can't. I mean, I'm 63 years old. I don't want time to be going by fast, but believe me, I want the midterms to get up here so we can get that.
You're going to vote, right?
Out of here.
You're going to vote?
Oh, hell yeah. I'm a Republican down here in Florida, but believe me, I'm voting blue down here because I'm tired of this freaking turd.
Well, that's one thing that we can do is you got to get the message out to your friends, to your families.
Oh, yeah.
You got to tell them to vote. Don't be afraid to talk to your neighbors. Bring it up. Tell them to spread the word because we're gonna need a landslide.
If there's any ICE agents there at the polling booth when I go, well, actually, I'm gonna vote by mail because they're gonna send them out in August or July, I think it is. I don't know what it is, but it's this. I don't know. I really don't think that's gonna happen, but who knows with this fat ass.
Oh, can't curse. Can't curse on the air. We can say
I'm
that?
sorry. I'm sorry, Leonard.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to leave it there, Andy, and we appreciate the call. If you're gonna call into the show, it's 702-221-7283. This is Leonard Cardinelli, and I'm filling in for Brian Shapiro on the PTL Talk Radio Show. That's 702-221-7283. And next we have Scott. Hi, Scott. This is Leonard. What's on your mind?
I want to tell you, first of all, how are you? It's been a minute.
Oh, I'm good. You sound like you're very positive today, Scott. That's encouraging.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to get your hopes up because I'm about to tell you what I think of Joe Walsh. I don't think we need more Joe Manchins in our party. To me, if he wants to say he's a libertarian, by all means, but I don't hear Democrat at all. I don't trust him. He said he wants to shrink government on both sides. I say let's expand the government for the poor and tax the rich at a 50% rate and not let them get away with it. And then help the poor. And then that's the way we solve the debt. Just shrinking the government doesn't do a damn thing. If you don't have income, you can't fix the debt. You'll just keep running debt. And I'm tired of people that voted for Trump who want me to believe that they're all of a sudden good politically. Maybe they're good people, but they're not good politically. I don't give a damn. Stop saying you're a Democrat. I don't want him in my party. He can be a libertarian and screw me out of money, but help me with my social, if I want to be gay or I want an abortion, he could help me with that. But he sounds like a nice guy.
He is. He's a nice guy, and he's a friend of the show, and he's intelligent. He really knows his stuff.
Yeah, he's still a Republican. He even admits that. So I don't know why he keeps saying he's a Democrat and wants to run as a Democrat. All he did was get mad at his party for changing, but underneath he's still that party that wants to hurt me and not help me. So. That's good. So that's all.
Well, on this show, as you know, Scott, we like to try to, give different voices to different people. And I myself think it's refreshing to talk to someone like Joe Walsh because he's very informed and he's on the subject of the day. Yeah. He knows what's going on. He has a little bit of a behind the scenes look, right? Because he had those.
I'm just saying he doesn't sound like he really changed any of his policy positions. He just hates that his party became Donald Trump. But underneath it, he's still Tea Party. And stop saying you're a Democrat. Just say you're a Republican. It's not a 4-letter word. Be who you are. But don't try to trick me into thinking you're a Democrat just because you said I side with Democrats now. Step to the back of the line, help us out, and then go back to your party. It's all right.
Well, maybe Congressman Walsh didn't have time to take calls today, but maybe next time he comes on the show, if he has some time, maybe we'll have him take some calls and
I don't hate him.
See
I
if
don't
he
hate
wants
him. He
to.
sounds like a good guy. But I need a little help in America. I'm white, but I'm poor. I need help.
So okay. Right. I mean, it sounds to me like you think social programs are a good idea.
All righty. Well, it's nice talking with you again. It's been a minute. I appreciate the show always.
All right, thanks, Scott. Thanks for calling in and
bring on a real Democrat though, like Ro Khanna again, or like.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Thanks for calling in. We appreciate it. Okay, so I would how Brian is, and I'll give you my personal opinion. I don't mind whatever's on your mind. You can have an opinion. You can call into the show as long as you're respectful and everybody's kind of respectful toward each other. You don't have to agree with the guests. Brian has many guests that I didn't particularly agree with on anything, and he has some guests that I agree with everything on, and including the callers. So if you have an opinion, call in 702-221-7283. Next, we're going to go to line 2, Dan from Nebraska. Hello, Dan. This is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Yeah, this is Ben.
Oh, Ben.
Been there, done that.
Okay,
yes.
So I think the producer just misunderstood.
Yeah, that's no problem. The biggest problem with Social Security is the people that make a lot of money, like you only pay Social Security on the first $150,000 they make. The other problem is there are so many ways of the rich to avoid paying Social Security, like unearned income and different ways they can shield their income. If everyone was taxed on their income properly for Social Security, the rates would be less and it would never run out of money.
Right. If we all had to contribute equally. And but you know, you know what the thing is too, Ben, is, billionaires, they don't care. They don't care, if you want to wipe out social programs, that little couple of thousand or whatever it is a month to a billionaire, they're willing to give that away to save money on taxes. So when you have the Trump administration wanting to get rid of social programs and saying Social Security is going broke, which, by the way, I will say for the record right here in front of everyone, I don't believe for a second that Social Security is going broke. What they're talking about is called an unfunded liability, and what that means is that you have an unfunded liability, but that exists at all times. Let me talk about it in terms of a mortgage. A mortgage is an unfunded liability. It means that your house is not paid off, and your mortgage company just can't show up tomorrow and say, "Hey, you have to pay the $400,000 you have left on your mortgage. You have to pay it today." That's not how things work. So what they're saying with Social Security is if everyone went on Social Security tomorrow, we wouldn't have the money to do it. But that's really not how it works. It's not an unfunded liability. And I know I got into the weeds a little bit, but that is, I think people should understand that's what's really going on.
Oh, yeah, I believe also, as long as people are working and paying in, it's not going to go broke overnight.
It's going to be
The other
fine.
thing I want to do is I want to just give a quick shout out to all my PTL friends. I love you all. God bless. Have a great weekend.
Oh, that's nice, Ben. We have Brian has created quite the family here. A lot of supportive people, a lot of people that seem to think the same. We get some in the live chat, you might get some room trolls and some negative commentary, but for the most part, it's a good, solid family. We look out for each other. People are always concerned with how they're doing, how their family's doing. So Brian Shapiro has created a really good radio show and talk radio program here. Okay, we're going next. We're going to line 3. Is it Mary in Massachusetts? Hi, Mary. This is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Oh, I got 2 things. One, that fellow that said the Central Park 5 were guilty, but actually the Central Park 5 were fully exonerated.
They were.
In December 2002 because their convictions were vacated because of DNA evidence. And Matthias Ray was a serial rapist that actually was convicted through
Correct.
DNA evidence.
And the bigger commentary there was about the racism in America and how
yes, exactly. But
how they're not
said
even
that they were
faking it
guilty was
anymore.
wrong.
They're not even lying about it anymore. They're actually quite proud of getting rid of DEI and affirmative action.
Right. But the fellow who said that they were guilty was a few minutes ago from Florida.
I misunderstood what he said. I thought he said not guilty. I misunderstood.
Oh, okay. Then that's my mistake. I misheard that. But the other thing I wanted to say was, how Brian has to wear a MAGA hat. Because of he lost a bet with Tim Pool.
Oh no!
Some poker game. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Well, he should prank Tim Pool by wearing like the MAGA hat that says "Make America Gay Again" and swap it out. So tell him.
I will text him.
And "Make America Go Away" that they were wearing in Italy, and maybe now and again swap the hats out.
Yeah, I had to pay a bet to Brian. I lost a bet to Brian a couple of weeks ago because I bet that the Vegas Golden Knights were going to win the Stanley Cup in 4 games straight, and I ended up losing a Starbucks bet, so I had to pay him off. But thank you for the call, Mary.
But
go ahead.
If he just said he would wear a MAGA hat, those are MAGA hats.
I don't know if I could wear a MAGA hat. I would never bet that because
no. But the "Make America Gay Again" hat or "Make America Go Away" like they had in Italy.
If he wore that, boy, he would. we would get a lot. He'd get a lot of comments and a
No.
lot of phone calls, and
It would take a lot of balls to do that.
yeah, they would put a whole. Maybe they make another. I don't know if you saw it or not, but Andrew Wilson
It
and
would
his
go so viral.
cronies made a cartoon with Brian, and I think if he wore a "Make America Gay Again" hat, I think that would probably prompt another cartoon from his haters.
But Tim Pool made him, because he lost the bet, so now he has to do that as a challenge. So that would be him getting Tim Pool back. So
yeah, you know
touche.
what? Maybe he can reorganize the bet for next time and change the conditions.
Just like halfway through the game, swap it out. See if anybody notices.
I think Tim Pool would probably tell him he wasn't allowed to wear it. That'd be my guess. But thanks for the call, Mary. Good call. Hopefully you'll have a good weekend. And
You too.
we're gonna leave it there. We're gonna move on, and we're gonna talk to Steve. Steve is calling from West Virginia. What's on your mind, Steve?
Hi, Leonard. It's hard to know where to start. I am on Social Security, and that was my number one issue. And I'm hearing all this stuff about all this backdoor stuff and that they're trying to cut our Social Security and all that stuff. And then you think of all these immigrants that were paying taxes towards Social Security that we're getting rid of, and now we don't have that money.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. They never. Let me interrupt you. They never get that money.
Exactly.
If you have somebody who's here illegally, an immigrant, and they pay in for 30 years of Social Security, by law, they do not get the payouts, but they do have to pay in if they have a legitimate job.
Exactly. But they do have to pay.
They do.
But now that they're out of the country, that's money that we don't have. Another thing, I had a conversation with one of my daughters one time, and she said, "Well, Dad, didn't you save for your retirement?" I said, "Well, Skylar, companies offered pensions. That was part of our wages that we negotiated. We got pensions. Now we don't have them."
Well,
so that's harder for people too.
Well, you got to give Joe Biden credit, because a lot of public employees, police, fire, and the like, didn't pay into Social Security for many years because of the law. And we, when you receive a pension, not everyone gets Social Security, and so for 40 years. There was no, if you were receiving a pension, you couldn't get Social Security. And if you remember, Joe Biden, just before he left his presidency, put forth legislation to change it, and so that people who do have pensions can also get their Social Security now. Are you aware of that?
I wasn't aware about the first part.
Say it again, Steve.
I wasn't aware that about the first thing that he did.
Yeah, he allowed it. He allows people with public employees with a pension can now also collect Social Security, and we can thank Joe Biden for that, because I don't think Donald Trump would have ever done something like that.
Oh no! And another thing I like to say is I've had conversations with these. Well, at the time they were Tea Party, and I hate paying taxes toward this and that and the damn socialists and all this garbage. I said, well, aren't you a socialist? He goes, well, what are you talking about? I said, are you on Social Security? Are you on Medicare? He goes, yeah, that's mine. I earned it. I said, well, then you're a socialist.
Right.
If you want to be a socialist, get off of it.
Because you have no choice. You have to pay into it. It's not a voluntary program.
But you don't have to sign up for it.
Well, you don't have to, but if you don't sign up when you're 65, if you don't sign up for Medicare, then you're penalized, I want to say 20% or more for the rest of your life. So if you miss that opening window when you're supposed to apply for Medicare, you will have to lose a percentage of it for the rest of your life. Did you know that?
I was just saying that if you don't want to be a socialist, why put yourself on the program?
Yeah. Do you think any of those the people who are against socialism, do you think any of them are going to turn down that monthly check after working 30 or 40 years and pay it into Social Security and then say, well, I don't want my monthly check because I'm retired, but that's a social program, so I don't want it. You think any Republicans or MAGAs are going to say that?
I had a carpool with a guy who complained like that, and as soon as he retired from the company, he ran down to the Social Security office. So
Yeah, and so they're kind of hypocritical, right? Aren't they like hypocrites?
Exactly, and as far as public schools, the Tea Party complained about having to pay taxes for public schools. And
What do you say about that? What do you say about that, Steve? How many Republicans? Not all Republicans are rich. How many of those conservative Republicans or those MAGAs send their children to public school? How many?
I know what you're saying.
Probably the greater majority. They enjoy the go to school, drop them off. That money is tax money that is put into education, and they're perfectly fine with that. What about disaster relief? Where do they think that comes from? When they have a tornado in the middle of the country and it rips apart, whole counties, and they're asking for disaster relief from the federal government. Is that a social program?
Well, the way you answered was, I said, well, how did your kid get through school? Well, she went through public school. Also, we pay taxes for your kid to go to school, but now you don't want to pay for other people's kids to go to school.
Right. And they don't want the money to go to a social program at all. And I always ask them and say, did you go to work today? Well, yeah, I did. Did you drive on a public road? And what about corporations where, like in Nevada, where they want the corporation to set up shop somewhere in Nevada, so the city or the county or whoever's, making the offer, they offer them tax abatements, and they say, okay, well, you won't have to pay taxes for your first 3 years. And it's a huge corporation and a huge building with a couple of thousand employees. And this happens all the time. And so that same corporation that doesn't pay their taxes because they get a tax abatement, so we can bring their corporation to Nevada, they don't have to pay their taxes for 3 years, but they still use the roads. They still use fire services. They still go to the parks and recreation centers. They still go to the public hospitals. You understand what I'm saying?
Exactly.
But they're proud that they don't have to pay any of the taxes that pay for any of that. Are there any more super chats? No? All right. Well, Steve, it was a good phone call, and I appreciate you calling in. And have a good weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
So the phone lines are open at 702-221-7283. I'm being told we have to take a short break for our station identification, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. You're listening to the Pushing the Limits Talk Radio Show. everyone. Welcome back to the Pushing the Limits Talk Radio Show with your host, Leonard Cardinelli, filling in for Brian Shapiro. Brian is out of town. He's getting ready to do the Tim Pool Show. I believe he's in Washington, D.C., so we wish him a lot of luck. And as one of the callers pointed out, I guess he's going to have to wear a MAGA hat, which is, that's going to be difficult. But he lost a bet, so you got to pay your debts. If you want to call in, the number is 702-221-7283. That's 702-221-7283. And I'd like to take a moment to talk about Venezuela. As you know, they had some terrible earthquakes there, and they're now reporting, I think it's CNN reporting, over 900 dead and over 15,000 injured. So our thoughts and prayers go out to Venezuela. I saw some videos online, and buildings were just crumbling. They were just falling to the ground, and they say there's a lot of people buried under those buildings. So if you happen to be a prayer kind of person, maybe we'll shoot out a quick prayer to Venezuela, and hopefully they'll be okay. Going back to a little bit to what we were talking about earlier today, we had a caller call in the other day and talk about how we're headed towards Marxism, and you're talking about Karl Marx, and it had to do with the labor class trying to take over government and push out capitalism, and Marxism is quite complicated, and it just kind of bothers me a little bit when people call into the show and they start talking about our country or certain politicians who are trying to go in that direction. And just to be clear, and you can look this up on Wikipedia on the internet if you don't think I'm accurate, and it says Marxism as Karl Marx's ideal stateless, classless, moneyless society. And the answer is it has never truly existed at a state level. So we're talking about something where unions and labor and hardworking people get to the point where they control everything, and they eventually get rid of all privatized industries, and just the whole idea of using that word is just ridiculous, because there's nothing close to that I can even think of, at least, and especially not in this country. And when we talk about capitalism is necessary. It is something that we do need. We do need to have capitalism in our philosophy. It balances out the social programs. Too much capitalism and you get fascism. Too much socialism and you start to get communism. But communism never really worked anyway. When they tried it in Russia and they tried it in China, communism is a leveling. So you take all the money and all the wealth and all the power and you consolidate it, and then you spread it out and you level the country so that all the systems of government are equal and fair to everyone. Now, we know that it never worked out that way, because communism, when you gather the power and gather the money and the government starts to take control, what happens is that money and that power never gets to the people. That's why communism doesn't work. So when people want to call in and argue about these certain expressions and these philosophies and what they really mean, that is not entirely accurate. Moving on. Also, when it comes to the economy, right now, inflation is an all-time high. I don't know why Donald Trump keeps saying the economy is great. Todd Bessent saying that core inflation is not a problem, and I really don't understand how the Trump administration can say that the economy is good. Probably because they don't go shopping, they don't go put gas in the car. Now, gas has gone down. I got gas a couple of days ago, and I think I paid $5.64 a gallon for premium. So the gas prices have come down a little bit, not to anywhere where it was before Trump started the war in Iran. So not a big fan of how that went. Also, we have to take a quick break. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a minute.
Who would have thought there'd be so many kids playing ice hockey in the desert? Jake Helps Hockey Foundation and the Los
I would take care of some issues. And the subject today, we're talking about the Iran war, we're talking about the economy. Socialism seems to be a subject that everyone wants to talk about. Social Security came up a lot today. So we are taking your calls at 702-221-7283. That's 702-221-7283. And who's up next? Larry from Texas. Okay, Larry from Texas. Hi, Larry. This is Leonard. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. I just want to talk about Social Security, if I got this right, but the employers pay into it also. So I think that's why they're trying to do away with the Social Security, so the big businesses don't have to pay. You know, years ago we used to get pensions and everything from these employers, like Walmart used to have, pay your employees pension, or Sears, Sears and Montgomery Ward, they used to have pension for their employees and health care. Now you're just working for a paycheck, basically. But I remember during COVID, Trump wanted to do away with you having to pay in your Social Security, but that would benefit the employer more than the employee. That was just my opinion on Social Security.
Right, but the thing isn't that kind of anti-human, or anti-American? Because
yes,
the Social Security program, let's say hypothetically you did away with it, what are people going to do when they're getting older and they can't work anymore, and they're too old to work and they work for 40 years?
What I'm trying to say, I guess, I paid into Social Security all my life too, but when it was during COVID, he was trying to propose where, you didn't have it suspended from your paycheck for a couple of months or whatever, but that wouldn't help the person. You say you pay $20, $30 a week, but that's helping the employers. If he has 100 employees, look at what they're paying. It would save the contractors and the companies more money. But I remember my grandparents, she worked for Sears. They had a pension and profit sharing, and nowadays you take a job, you take a job just for that paycheck. They don't want to pay your health care on you. They don't want to have no kind of pension. What the world has changed.
Well, it hasn't changed that much, Larry, because what you're going to get left with if you were to get rid of Social Security and social programs is a bunch of elderly people who are kind of unhealthy and don't have enough money to live. And if you look at civilizations, even going back to the Mayan civilizations, if you look at civilizations that ignored their elderly and ignored their sick and their indigent and their mentally ill people and the children that were sick, any civilization that ignored those people within time. Now it took decades and took hundreds centuries actually, but they ceased to exist. So you have to have a country that has a system for taking care of people as they get older, as they become sick, because you can't just leave them to their own devices, because that part of the country would cease to exist. We wouldn't have any elderly people, and they'd have no way to feed themselves or no income to live at all, nowhere to live.
Yeah, well, what I'm trying to, I guess my point is, why, the grandparents and stuff, why don't we go back to the day where corporations actually paid, you took a job and, they paid in your health care, or they paid into some kind of pension for you, instead of, now it's just, most people are just relying on Social Security to survive. But I mean, you take these jobs just for your hourly wage. That's all you get on these checks. Most of these, Walmart's the biggest employer in the United States. And they work you part time, where they don't pay you no kind of.
And they don't pay a lot of benefits. I talked to a Walmart worker once.
The high price.
Well, let me just tell you what happened. I talked to
for low prices, basically.
I talked to a cashier, and she told me she was part-time, grown woman with a family.
Yeah.
And she said only the manager and assistant manager were full-time, and everybody else was working 30 hours, and they have no benefits, and you come in when they call you in. So I understand what you're saying.
My wife was a perfect example. They work her 39 hours, and if she worked over, they get mad. And she went in there. I belonged to the IBW for 40 years.
We love the IBW.
She went to work with an IBW shirt on. Next day, she was called in the office. She came up short in her register and all this. And she'd been a checker for 30 years. They made her on her own time go through and see where she's short and all that. I told her just to tell them to stick it, and she didn't need that job that bad. That's how greedy these corporations are.
I agree, Larry, but we're going to have to leave it there.
We're just a number.
Thanks for the call, Larry. We appreciate it. And I think we have time for maybe one more caller. Hi, Alexa. This is Leonard. How are you? What's on your mind?
Hi, Leonard. You're doing a lovely job.
Thanks, Alexa.
Love the job. I just want to make a comment. Social Security is there for people because now we can't save for anything. If they take it out of their check, at least they're going to have a backup. You know what I'm saying? Most people cannot save for retirement.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, we're a society. We're America. We're not a third world country. We're a well-funded country, and you have to, right, as a civilization, you have to be invested in people that are eventually going to get older, and they're going to get sicker, and you have to have some kind of system. You can't just let those people have nowhere to live and no food to eat. That's just ridiculous. And the fact that they want to take away Social Security or suspend it, and let me tell you something, Alexa, if we allowed them to suspend Social Security for one day, the politicians for one day, we would never get it back. I promise you that.
Right.
We'd never get it back.
Right. Thank you, Leonard. Have a great weekend.
You too, Alexa. Okay, I guess we're going to have to leave it there. This is Leonard Cardinelli on the Pushing the Limits talk radio show, filling in for Brian Shapiro, who's in D.C. and going to be debating Tim Pool. I've filled in for him today. It's been my pleasure and my honor to fill in. We'd like to thank former Congressman Joe Walsh for coming on the show, and thank the callers. And everyone, have a good weekend, and try to, well, I don't know if it's 108 everywhere, but if you're around Vegas anywhere, try to keep cool. Have a good weekend. See you soon.
Hey,